Last week we started talking about different mixing philosophies and different struggles that people may have when working on original music. This week we're going to be exploring my personal process and how I go from an idea, including how do I find inspiration, all the way through how I write, mix, record, master the entire song. And maybe even up until how I release, how do I come up with album art, how do I determine the name of the album or the song or whatever. All that and more on this episode of The Musicist. Hello and welcome to The Musicist. My name is Sage, and like I said in the intro, today we are talking about my personal philosophy and how I go about writing, recording a song. How do I find inspiration? How do I mix? How do I master? Let's get into it. So how do I come up with inspiration? How do I find the inspiration to make a song? Usually for me, it'll start with the music. So I'll be working on a beat, as they're called in hip-hop, which is just the instrumental track, the music behind the words. And I'll be working on that, and I'll just get a certain vibe. A lot of times I'll just start, I want to make a certain type of song, and so I'll start working on it, and then I'll get a certain vibe, and I'll know this has the potential to actually be something. And usually whenever I'm happen to be going through or researching or studying, or just a thought that I had that I've run by friends, run by family, to talk about, or just a thought that I had, or something that God has shown me, that then becomes the inspiration as what I want to write about. And so I'll usually come up with just a filler name for the track along the lines of what I want to talk about. Or if I'm just producing and I'm just producing, then I'll label it kind of how I feel about the beat, or just a certain type of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a certain type of feeling I get from the beat. Or what it is. If I'm trying to do like a jazzy hip-hop fusion track, maybe I'll name it jazz fusion or jazz hip-hop or whatever. So that's how I usually start. How do I flesh out? Because when I make a beat, I usually start out with loops. And so I'll have like an 8 or 16 bar loop, maybe of a verse idea and a chorus idea. If I'm thinking of doing anything different for the chorus, I'll produce both of those in just kind of a loop, and I'll just loop over and over as I work on it, and as I get sounds and I figure out where I want everything, and kind of some panning and just basic, how do I want it to sound before mixing? How do I kind of want the song to sound? It's kind of preparing the recording. How do I flesh out to the song? Usually, the song kind of dictates it for me. How do I feel about the song? Where do I think this song's going in light of the inspiration that I have? So do I feel like this is supposed to be like a powerful chorus type song, or do I think that this should be more laid back? Do I feel sad about something? Do I feel mad or passionate or happy about something? And that'll determine kind of how I go about structuring the song. So for example, if I'm feeling happy or triumphant about something, say, I may start out with a big opening, and go into kind of an epic sounding verse or something, bring it down maybe for the verse, to kind of explain why I'm feeling triumphant or what have you. If I'm feeling a little bit melancholy, then I'll start out with a more laid back or subdued intro, building up into a more laid back and subdued verse. If I'm feeling just I need to get started, I can do that too. But it all comes down to the song and how you structure the song and the inspiration. What are you trying to talk about? If you're trying to have I went through some struggles and now I'm triumphant, that's one thing. If you're starting out triumphant and you want to just exclaim to the world how triumphant and happy you are, that's another thing. So there's all of that in there. So how do I go about writing? How do I write? Now, if you have been paying attention last week, I predominantly do hip hop music. So how do I write my rap music? How do I write raps? It kind of comes in spurts for me. I don't sit down with my pad and my pen and I just write out lines and lines and lines and cross them all out. For me, how I go about it is I put on the beat, I play the section that I'm working on over and over and over and over again, the verse, and I just say stuff until I'm happy with something that comes out of my mouth. I wouldn't call it freestyling because kind of just mumble and then a word will come in or a line will come in, or I'll just say something and it'll sound cool to me and I'll write it down and then I'll work like that. Rarely do I just sit down without the music and just write. I need the music so I can put the lyrics to the music. I can fit the lyrics to the music. On occasion, I'll have an idea for some lyrics and maybe a melody, and I'll try and make a beat around that. Doesn't usually happen, but let me backpedal because I don't usually start with the verse. I usually start with the chorus. I usually start with the hook, and I'll work on the hook for a couple weeks or however long it takes to get the sound I want. Now, how do I know what sound I want? It's usually a question of influence. What have I been listening to? What am I into? What have I wanted to try? What cool thing did I hear some other artists do that I wanted to try for my song? That's usually how it comes out. So if you listen to my tracks and you hear a chorus, I was probably listening to music that sounded similar to that hook, or I had a hook similar to that, or that was my nearest approximation of what the hook was supposed to sound like. And so that's kind of how I go about writing my hooks, and I'll just come up with different harmonies. I'll scrap it. Maybe I don't like the melody I came up with. I'll rewrite the melody. Maybe I didn't like the lyrics. I'll rewrite the lyrics. This is an ongoing process up until, if I'm being honest, I release the song. Shouldn't be like that. I don't like it being like that, but that's genuinely how it is quite a lot of the time. So now going back to rap, how do I go about recording the rap then? Do I record it in one take? Do I do several takes? Am I a fraud because I don't do just one take and I don't say it all at the same time a lot of the time? I don't think so. If you do think so, I'm sorry. When I perform the songs live, I do it in one take. And I can do my rap in one take. I just usually don't record it like that. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people don't record their rap verse in one take. It's rare where you find people who just, there was one whole take and I just did it. Usually, and depending on who you listen to, for example, NF, it is impossible for him to do it in one take. Now he does it differently live, so he can do it one take. But if you listen to the recording, he will cut himself off. So as one word trails off, another word will start, and you cannot do that in one take. So you have to stop. You have to finish that line, stop the recording, start the next recording at the right spot, and come in at the right spot. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I haven't got the words down yet, and so maybe I'll have to re-record certain words over or certain lines over so I can focus around a certain word, because my mouth doesn't work like that. It is not prepared for that. I haven't practiced it enough. But usually after I recorded everything and I practice it and listen to it, I can do it in one take by the time it comes time for me to actually perform it live. And I think that's how a lot of people are. I think a lot of people actually practice a lot more than I do. I usually, when I have a line and I can do it reasonably well, I'll just record it. And unfortunately, and this is something that I'm starting to work on more, I don't ever really come back to re-record it, to get it right, to say all the words the way I wanted them to be said. My fault. And that's something I gotta work on as I go about getting better at recording and getting better at producing and writing and being a musician. That's something that I know I need to work on. But that's currently how I do it. I just, as soon as I have the line and I can say the line reasonably well, I can say all the words in the right rhythm, approximately. I'll tell you the reason why approximately in a little bit. I'll record it, lay it down. Does it sound okay? Yes, it sounds okay. Okay, moving on to the next line. I usually write in 4-bar increments. There are times when it's really tough that I'll write in 2-bar increments. And if I'm feeling particularly confident, or the words are just flowing right then I'll record it. I'll record in 8-bar increments. I don't think I ever record the entire verse. Partly because I run out of breath. The way I rap, the kind of flows that I use, I don't leave myself enough spots for breath, because I have a lot to say, and so I don't breathe much in my verses, which makes doing them live hard, because I can't move around much. I have to stand in one spot pretty much and wave my hand around, because I gotta look interesting somehow, some way. But I'm doing that mainly because I can't say it and move around. I can't rap and move around at the same time a lot of the time. I definitely cannot jump. I cannot run, because I'm using up too much air as it is trying to say the lyrics in time at the speed I wrote them. That's something else I have to work on. I have to put in breaks, or I have to learn how to breathe, or I have to change it when I do it live or something. But I just like how it sounds. I like my flows. I like how I rap. I like how it comes out sounding. So I'm not going to change that necessarily. I may tweak it a little bit so that I could do it better, one take, and you can hear everything. That's something that I have been working on in my new music that I'm working on now, so that I can do it better live. And I've been working on those things. So that's how I go about writing my raps and kind of recording my raps. So when do I start mixing? I start mixing the moment I start producing. That's how I do it. I try and mix as I go, just so I have an idea of the song, because for me, if the song doesn't sound professional, I won't rap the best. I won't give my all in the recording of the vocals if I feel like I'm not, if I feel like it's a scratch track, I'll sing and I'll rap like it's a scratch track. So I won't focus on the pitch that I'm supposed to be hitting. I won't focus on the motion I'm supposed to be giving. That's another thing I need to work on, just really getting into that headspace and just giving it my all emotionally when I record. But that's how I am right now. So I have to have it mixed to a certain point. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it never is. But I have to have it mixed to a certain point so I have an idea of what it's supposed to sound like, so I can feel like I can close my eyes and I can feel like I'm on stage performing this live. And that's kind of how I get my emotion in there. I imagine I'm doing this live in front of people who paid to see me perform it live, or maybe who just like my music. And I'm like, I can't just give them a deadpan delivery. I have to have emotion in this. I can't not have emotion. My fans need it. So then I'll put my emotion in there to a certain extent. And that's something that I work on all the time. I always work on. And if you would hear me write and record my rap, my singing, you'll hear me go through a whole bunch of different emotions as I try to figure out what I'm supposed to do. But I start mixing pretty much as soon as I start producing, just so I can make the sounds the way I want the sounds, so that when I actually go to record, I'm not trying to remember everything I wanted to do. So if I hear something, I try and go do it. So after I have everything recorded, I mix it again. So if I know for a fact this is exactly how I want this instrument to sound, I'll print the track. I'll print the track, and then I'll treat that like it's just its own signal. This is what came out of the instrument. This was an instrument. I can't go back and I can't touch it. And then I'll go and I'll treat it like it was its own signal and mix that to the track. Here's a little bit of a downside, just in case you were thinking everything I do is great and you haven't been listening to the last 16 minutes of me talk about different struggles that I have. So just here's a bit of a problem. As you mix it as you go, things tend to get louder, things tend to get muddy, things tend to clash. This is part of the reason why I end up mixing after everything's recorded. I take everything off, all the plugins that I put on, all the panning, all the automation, everything that I've worked on, scrap it. Start from fresh and remix it. Because now I have the vocals, which for hip-hop are the most important thing. Kick, probably one of the most important drums. Snare, keeps you on time. That's where your rhymes are supposed to come in, right around the snare or on the one where the kick goes. So that determines your rhythm. Then the bass element, usually an 808 for the type of music I do. Maybe I have a different bass that I mix in. So now I know I can prioritize the instruments in terms of vocals and drums. For me, I mix my drums, kick, snare, vocals, same level, same loudness, so that they command the same amount of space and same loudness. The vocals are typically a little bit louder, just a little bit clearer, because that's what I want you to focus on. I don't really want you to focus on the kick and snare at the expense of the kick, or at the expense of the the vocals, the rap vocals. I want you to focus on all three. So I'll mix the vocals. Those are the loudest. Those are the most important. Then I'll focus on the kick and snare, bass element, whatever that bass element is. I'll focus on that. Then I'll mix in the main melodic element. That's the next loudest thing, because that's supposed to be what carries the harmony of the track. And this is for the rap verse. Obviously, it's a little bit different with singing. It's the same principle that I try to keep, but for rap, I keep the vocals a little bit above the kick and snare, because this is where I'm saying everything I want to say. In the singing, I bring it down a little bit so that the kick, snare, and vocals are the same loudness, same volume, because this is where it's supposed to be. I usually only sing in the chorus, and so I try to keep that. The most cohesive. I want that to be like, this beat came with this chorus and I just added in this verse. Kind of. Not necessarily 100% total, but that's what I want it to kind of sound like. That's what I'm trying to emulate. That's what I'm going for. Then, so now that I have my vocals, my main vocals, the main melodic elements, the kick, snare, hi-hats come in. They're right around the same volume as the most melodic element. Maybe a little bit quieter, depending on the song, depending on the context. What is the hi-hats doing? Are they important? Are they really not important? Are they just for excitement, rhythmic excitement, harmonic excitement? By harmonic excitement, I mean the frequency response and how high up they are on the frequency spectrum. All of that you have to factor in. That's why no song is the same. And if you listen to any mix engineer, any rapper, they don't know anything. I'm just kidding. If you listen to any mix engineer, any producer, any mastering engineer, they will tell you, and they're right. If they're worth their salt, they will tell you no song is the same. You may use presets, you may use templates, but no song is the same. So you can't just take one preset or one vocal chain or one mixing philosophy and just slap it across all of your music, because if you do, certain songs are gonna sound great, because that's what that type of music, or that's what that process sounds good with. Other songs are going to sound horrible because that's not how you're supposed to mix that song, or just not the best way to mix that song. And frankly, that's it. There are multiple ways to mix a song, and the whole art is finding the best way for you. What you're trying to go for is the best sounding to you. And so that's kind of how I start mixing. When do I start mastering? Throughout the whole thing, I have a limiter on. What does a limiter do? It cuts all of the peaks at a certain decibel, and then you can turn everything up, make it appear louder while not gaining any more decibels. So you're not actually clipping, but it gets louder. So if you listen to any track on the radio, all of these have been limited. And so why do I do this? I want to hear how it sounds at a louder volume. Frankly, that's it. I want to hear how it sounds at a louder volume. Now, the thing about limiters and turning things up, if you just turn something up, it typically will sound better because you can hear it better. Doesn't mean it's better, which is why I just put it on for the whole time, so that any decision I make is in reference to that end master limiter. Now, I'll tweak the master limiter as I go about mixing and as I go about actually mastering. Now, actually mastering after I've mixed the song a couple times, just to make sure that I feel like I have the best mix I can get. I feel like everything is in its place. I have all the automation I want, all the automation I need, whatever. Then I'll go into mastering. Now, what do I mean by what's my mastering process? My mastering process goes, I put on an EQ. That's what the first thing I put on. So I can determine the frequency response, what the frequency looks like for the entire mix. Next week, I'm not doing any. I'll probably do one next week. So next week I'll talk about mastering a little bit more, and specifically EQ in mastering. What is a good frequency graph that you're trying to go for? And if you can see, I'm kind of miming it right now, so just keeping that kind of shape in mind. If you're not watching this, you should watch it. I will be posting this video on my social media, maybe on YouTube, I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, back to mixing and mastering. So put on an EQ first, so I can get that. I will tell you about it next week. Get that frequency graph. Then I'll put on a compressor. Now, compressors are your best friend in mastering. That's how you get loudness without sounding distorted. And it's a trick. It is seriously an art, and I envy people who are able to do it just like that. It's hard for me. I'm going to say that up in front right now, but I'm working on it. I'm getting better at it, etc., etc. So I'll put on a compressor. Then I'll start dealing with mid-side stuff. So stuff that's only in the middle, like the bass, kick, snare, my main vocals, straight up the middle. I want to deal with those differently than how I want to deal with the sides. What that allows me to do is make it sound wider to a certain extent. All of this is about making it sound as big and as exciting as possible. That's how I usually like to go about mastering. After the compressor and the mid side, then I'll put on another EQ. Now this is specifically for the high end. I don't touch the low end. I try and get the low end as good as possible before going on to the high end. And I treat the high end a little bit differently. I like it sounding a little bit crisp. It sounds more professional. It sounds more polished. If you have a clear high end, it doesn't sound money. I hope it makes money. It doesn't sound muddy. I lost my train of thought because I said money instead of muddy. So it doesn't sound muddy, and it just sounds a little bit more professional. After that EQ, I put on a stereo enhancer. Again, this is supposed to be making it as wide as possible. Now, there's a couple ways I do a stereo enhancer. Around this time, I usually do multi-band compression, which is basically like combining an EQ and a compressor at the same time. So I can compress the lows different than how I compress the middle, different than how I compress the high end, and usually in mid-side, in a multi-band compressor, you can control the stereo width of the sound, or of that frequency. So bass, rule of thumb, mono, 100% mono. You don't want different types of bass because it does sound good. It doesn't sound good. I have yet to find a producer, mixing engineer, mastering engineer who doesn't put all their basses mono. Now, occasionally, for an effect, they may have the bass leave mono for a little bit, but for the most part, for 97.6% of the time, mono bass. Just start there, and if you need it to break the rules, but mono bass. Okay. Mids, I usually don't touch the frequency or the stereo width because I like it how it is. High end, I'll maybe turn it up a little bit. Now, why do I do this? I want it to look like this. So this is low frequencies, this is high frequencies. So the higher up it goes, the wider it is, so it doesn't clutter up what I want to be in the middle. Mono, because I'm saying middle, and there's middle frequencies. So the bass, I want it to be straight up and down in the middle, like it's coming out of your nose, like right here. Boom. Mids can come out here. The highs coming out straight like this. That's how you get a wide sound. That's how you get a huge, epic sounding recording. That's what I want to find. That's what I want to do with my mastering. After that, I usually put on a stereo enhancer and just boost everything out a little bit so it just sounds bigger. But you got everything in moderation. So you don't ever push anything as hard as you can. Unless you mixing, or that's a sound design decision, but when it comes to mastering, subtlety is the name of the game. It's all about subtle moves that add up at the end. Now, throughout all of this, I may add in a couple compressors here and there just to tame things, make sure that I'm not going too crazy, as well as turning up the apparent volume, making sure that the loudness is at where I want it to be relative to other professional mixes, songs that I like listening to, songs that I think of as professional. you got to make sure that you do not ever I forgot what I was gonna say. Anyway, don't push it when you're mastering because it's gonna sound bad. Then I go to the end limiter. The end limiter is where you're done. After you have that end limiter, don't touch anything else because then you may turn stuff up and you may end up clipping, and you don't want that to happen. So this is the end of it. This is where you stop. End limiter. I try not to go. I don't try not to cut any peaks more than 6 dB. That's where I set it. However low on the threshold I have to put that, so be it. Also, I don't leave the ceiling at 0. I turn it down to negative 0.1 is usually where I put it at, so that I can guarantee that I will never clip, ever clip at any point in time, on any occasion, for any reason. Zilch, nada, don't touch me. That's how I go about going through all of that. We're kind of long today, so quick, how do I go about naming the song? By the time I'm done recording the hook, I have an idea for the song, or by the time I finish writing the verse or the song's done being recorded, I have a name for the song. That's when it comes in. So before I go into mixing, I already have a name for the song. That kind of happens separately. Album art. How do I go about album art? I go about making my album art based off of the idea of the album, which I usually come up with as soon as I'm done working on the previous project. That's just how I go about it. Or just another, at some point in time I'll figure it out, or as I'm working on the song. Album cover, I just take a picture of myself. I usually don't set up all these lights, and I don't usually have the best lighting. I just take a picture, find one that I think I look cool in, or that I think could work. I watch a lot of Photoshop tutorials. I teach myself. I watch tutorials. That's how I taught myself how to do Photoshop, and so now I do my own album cover in Photoshop, and I'll just, whatever I was watching or whatever I thought looked cool from a Photoshop tutorial, I'll follow that tutorial for the album art. And then I distribute through a site called DistroKid. That's how I get my music on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Music, on iTunes, Amazon Music, you name it, it's probably there. You can probably find it where you listen to music. And that's how I go about working from no idea what I'm doing, blank screen, just opened up FL Studio, that's my particular DAW of choice, to where I release the music, and you can hear it. That's how I go about it. And so if you liked what you listened to, even though we went a little long today, please leave a like, please leave a comment if you want to. If you liked the video quality, or if you didn't like the video quality and you think I should never do a video ever again, leave a comment in the video. I'll read it, and I'll probably laugh at you and then